Dorian, I'm going to ask you some hard questions.
Okay.
Try to give me your own account of what happened in Cornerstone.
Basically, I know that I went there because suddenly out of the clear blue sky, when I was 3 years old, I'd been talking and everything, and really I'd been well above average development-wise. But suddenly at 3, I stopped talking completely, and I wouldn't respond to anybody except to kind of lash out at them, try and push them away, and I would sit in a corner and rock. Actually, for a while, I saw do that a couple of times. And I was like, "Oh my God, it's not happening again!" But it wasn't. It was something else. Anyway, but I was, my mom was really worried because she just wasn't able to get through to me at all. And she started, taking me around to different places where they were all like, "Oh, she's autistic." No, she's not autistic. She is talking. Oh, you imagine she talked. No, no, she was talking all right. Nobody would believe her when she said, I've been talking and, doing all the things that I ought to do and then some before suddenly, shutting down. And eventually she, found the Cornerstone School. I forget who recommended it to her, but she, found the Cornerstone School and took me to get tested. And so I went to Cornerstone from there. And I remember that, everyone there was always very warm and, friendly and receptive. And you guys were always sort of helped draw us out without getting in our face. I don't think any of us ever felt like coerced or, kind of browbeaten to, show us what you can do. I remember it was always on, kind of friendly, warm, talking and one-on-one with each of us, and, a lot of play therapy, like with puppets and, little toys and things. And I remember some of the funniest bits, were with you. Like, for example, for some reason, this little fella, I think his name was Jed. This little guy and I were,
Did you say?
Jed.
That is his name. Jed,
Oh.
yes.
Oh, wow, I remember it. Great. Well, I remember Jed and I were, for some reason, we had gotten into our heads to make some kind of soup of all the things in the backyard.
That's right.
And we were putting leaves and branches, and we were trying to put ants in, but of course the ants were, took a dim view of this, and they kept trying to crawl out. They had wanted no part of this soup, thank you very much. And I remember that you were getting involved in trying to help us out there. We need a little soup guidance there. And, some water got splashed in your eye at one point. And like, "Oh, are you okay? That's just water, no big deal." And so that was pretty funny. But, hey, you guys were always very fun and friendly and really interactive with us.
I remember it very well. It was worm soup you were making.
Oh, that's right. Yes, there were worms involved. You're right, there were worms involved. But there were also ants. Because I remember
definitely.
The ants kept going on the edge of the pot.
To me, they were secondary
to
the
worms.
To you, the ants were terribly important.
Oh, because they kept crawling out.
So what did I know? I thought the worms were important.
Well, the worms were more cooperative. They weren't trying to crawl out of the pot. They were kind of stuck in there. Poor worms.
Do you remember Dr. Taft?
Vaguely. Give me a little more description. I may remember the person and not the name as well.
Well, I don't think I can describe him to you because I didn't know him as a person, but only as a referring voice and reported that. He thought you were autistic, and in fact,
that must have been one of the ones that my mom, met with early on.
Yes, and the way my notes show that there was a whole year in which you didn't talk, that you had done wonderfully up to age 2.
Yeah.
And had stopped and had gone a whole year without much talking and much social development. That, like your brother cut everything off for 11 years, you had cut it off for a year.
It might be
true. So we were very, very worried about you.
That will be true, because I remember I actually started getting treatment at 3.
Yes.
I know my mom had spent quite some time trying to find help.
Yeah. So there had been 2 diagnoses from a child development center, and Dr. Taft. You remember Dr. Stein?
Vaguely, I do remember Dr. Stein. I just remember my mom being mad at him the most. I think he had said that and a few other things she didn't feel like hearing.
She didn't like what he said.
No.
Yeah. He thought you were autistic, and so did I at the time. And
what changed your mind?
You changed my mind. You convinced me.
I'm glad.
Well, it was your progress that convinced me. But I thought you did have a serious problem. And that's why I'm so excited to find you. And that to see what you might represent in the way of other children's potentials if treated early enough and intensively enough. And I'm wondering what you remember about the treatment and what you think helped you. You said I got involved. That seemed to help you. We didn't press you too hard to talk. That seemed to be important, that we were tactful.
Yeah, I mean, I think I recall rocking in the corner again at some point in Cornerstone one day, and if I recall correctly, I believe that you actually got next to me and sort of, I don't know if you began rocking at that point, but you were sitting next to me and kind of, trying to, just gently and nicely, communicate with me. And I think, things like that were important. I think it kind of got a message through there, because I definitely remember having a good time at Cornerstone and, doing all kinds of, things and, playing with other kids and everything. Funny, another thing I remember, I don't know how pertinent you'll find this, but there was another little girl there called Anne, and I remember she had a bunch of brothers, and I think, maybe her mom gave them more attention than her or something, and she was always trying to act like a boy. And I went into the bathroom with her one day, and she was trying really hard to pee like a boy. And she was under the impression, I think, that the penis came out of the belly button. So for both of us, actually, we're standing there, because I was like, ooh, this looks interesting. We're trying to make the penis come out of the belly button and pee. And it's like this comical episode. And eventually somebody set us straight. I forget how and why, but it was pretty wacky.
Do you remember some of the other adults there besides me and Miss Dorian?
Yes, absolutely. Mrs. Ronald. I was always very fond of Mrs. Ronald. And, oh my gosh, why can I never remember this lady's name? With gray hair.
Mrs. Herzog.
Thank you, Mrs. Herzog. Yes, I knew it was the name of an author, but I didn't remember which author, Mrs. Herzog. But, yeah, I remember they were always very kind and, nice too. And, they seemed to, I think, also be very simpatico with the kids and everything. But yeah, I do remember.
Do you remember Jed and Anne?
I know there were others too. They're the ones that really stick out in my mind, and I remember obviously. I guess it's a whole darn staff, isn't it? There's you and Mrs. Ronald and Mrs. Herzog and Elizabeth Dorian. Anyone I forgot?
Dr. Stein was there. Your mother was in the class quite often.
Yes, yeah, I do remember
that.
Mom came a number of times. Yeah. I don't recall exactly what she did, but I recall that she was present. And I don't think she didn't actually do anything, did she? Wasn't she more like observing or anything? Or am I mistaken about that? It was been a while, obviously.
Has she ever talked to you about it?
Well, she finds it very painful to discuss, the old Cornerstone days. Even when she was trying to write a little summary for you, about those years, she kept having to stop because she found it very painful to remember that because, she wasn't, not because of anything anybody did there, but because, it still bothers her to this day that this happened to me and really nobody knows why.